And just to get, a perspective of how things have been going throughout the day, how could the marches have affected the economy today, given that we saw many people turned out in their numbers on the streets today?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have seen a large amount of people on the streets and going to various destinations. But I think the important thing is, unlike previous strike activity, where you get a whole group of workers from a particular industry going out to the streets, they essentially affect that sector's production cycle. I mean, this wasn't the case here. Here you have a planned march with people coming out under a particular time frame, so let's say between 10 and 2. That doesn't necessarily put a spanner in the works in any particular sector. So I don't think you're going to receive reports come the weekend that the economy was necessarily hurt by this.
I would wonder if we have so many people like that. I was looking at not necessarily the skin color of the protesters, but their numbers and the age differences. It looks like everybody left their workplaces, and could there have been a total shutdown of corporate South Africa and some, shops and industries?
It's interesting you raise the questions. I mean, some of the people that we spoke to in this particular instance, I was at Liliesleaf Farm earlier this morning, there were one or two people outside on the fringes of the protest saying they're not joining because there's a sense of leniency that they noticed in this particular march. In other words, what they're saying is that corporates appear to be a bit more lenient and giving their workers a chance to exercise their right to protest, but come back in the time frame of 2 or 3 hours. Now, this is very different from some of the marches you see where corporates take a more difficult task in allowing people to leave. So it just will be interesting to see what the commentary is on that leniency and whether or not it serves the interests of the big companies to let go some of the workers for a while. Interesting subject.
Yeah, I heard that people were saying the march was very organized throughout the country and not, pockets of violence there and there, very peaceful, no looting. And just to ask you, as a person who is in the field of economics, what you're feeling about this march as compared to the marches that may come, given that during the marches, we had bad news coming in that we have been downgraded as well.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, the thing is, whenever you have signs of instability, whether it's on the economic or political front, it unnerves a ratings agency. Of course, it didn't take a violent march today to have us downgraded. We've downgraded for the second time this week, first by S&P Global, now by Fitch. So there's a sense of uneasiness out there. And remember what happens for the average South African when you have downgrades into sub-investment grade. Essentially and ultimately, debt gets more expensive. So your interest rate will definitely rise in time, in future, and it just becomes a bit more unaffordable in your everyday living. So that's one consequence. I just want to go back to where we were this morning. We were at Liliesleaf. You mentioned violence. Yes, the ratings agencies and observers watch that. And it was a rather peaceful march. It was headed by Cheryl Carolus, and we also had a political veteran there and an activist, Joyce Sekero, who was heavily involved in the Human Rights Commission in the mid-90s. But no sign of any intimidation, no sign of violence. But the sentiment of what the normal message is, unhappiness about the leadership as far as the presidency is concerned, that was there. And there you have it, after 3 o'clock, everyone back in their offices, so you don't get the sense of this prolonged sense of, uncertainty or disruption. Yeah,
well, Devan, I don't know whether to call these times interesting or tough times, but anyway, whatever word we use, these are the interesting times.
Colin, thank you very much.
All right, Devan Murugan, SABC economic reporter, talking to us live right here on News Today. Now, getting on to